Welcome, grab a popcorn, relax, you will enjoy this story, and please do not forget to subscribe to this channel.
Chima Okafor was 25, and people noticed him even when he did not want to be noticed. Not because he tried to shine, but because there was something about him that refused to look small, even when life did everything to make him bend. He was tall and handsome in a quiet way, deep-set eyes that looked like they carried thoughts, a straight face that did not beg for pity, and a calm strength in his shoulders that made strangers assume he had it easier than he did. They were wrong. That evening, he dragged his body out of work like a man pulling a heavy load with a tired rope. Dust sat on his skin and clothes like it belonged there. His shirt clung to him from sweat. His palms were rough, his back ached, his stomach felt like a hollow drum beating inside him. He stopped beside the road, breathing slowly and trying to gather himself before heading to the small place he called home. In his pocket was a folded note. It was not a love letter. It was not a contract. It was his own handwriting. Numbers, calculations, and a single line written at the top in plain ink. 300,000 bride price. He had been counting it the way hungry people count grains of rice. Not because he loved money, but because that number stood between him and the life he had promised himself he would build. He had been with Helen for 5 years, 5 long years of patience, sacrifice, and quiet endurance. He wanted to marry her like a proper man, not with shame, not with empty hands. So he worked, and he kept working. Chima's fingers reached into his pocket and touched the edge of his savings envelope. It was not thick, but it was growing. Slowly, painfully. He swallowed, forcing his hunger down like it was an insult he did not have time to answer. Then the road changed. A deep, soft purr rolled toward him. Smooth, expensive, almost unreal. Headlights glided across the dust. A luxury car pulled up and stopped so close to him it felt like a scene from a film. People nearby turned their heads. Chima did not move at first. His body was too tired for surprise. He simply stared at the car as if it had made a wrong turn. The back door opened. A man stepped out. He was in his early 50s, well-built, neatly dressed, with the kind of composure money gives people, but his face was not composed. His eyes were wet and his mouth trembled like he was holding back words that had waited too long. This was not a stranger. This was Mr. Charles Okafor, Chima's father. Not just any rich man. Charles Okafor was known in powerful circles as the owner of one of the most influential banks in the country, a bank so feared and respected that people said one phone call from him could freeze a man's entire life. He had money, yes, but more than that, he had reach. He had control, the kind of control that made people careful around his name. But in front of Chima, he looked like none of that mattered. He walked forward slowly, as if he was afraid Chima would disappear if he blinked. "Chima," he called, voice low, broken in places. "My son." Chima's chest tightened. The dust on his skin suddenly felt like fire. His hunger vanished, replaced by something sharp and bitter. Charles stopped a few steps away, staring at him like he was seeing a miracle. "I've been looking for you," Charles said. Please, talk to me. Just talk to me." Chima's hands clenched at his sides. For a moment, there was only silence between them, the kind of silence that carries 5 years inside it. Then Chima laughed, one short sound that held no humor at all. "You found me," he said, voice flat. "After all this time, you found me." Charles nodded quickly, desperate. Yes, I... "Why is it now?" Chima cut in, and his voice rose like a wound being torn open. "Why are you here again?" Charles flinched. Chima stepped forward, and the tiredness in his body turned into anger that seemed to wake every part of him. "You are my father," he said, each word heavy. "And you have only one son. You did not care for me when it mattered, but now you want to come and talk about family." Charles opened his mouth, but Chima did not stop. "My mother died 5 years ago," Chima said, his eyes burning. 5 years. Do you know what I did that day?" Charles's face collapsed. "I called you," Chima continued. "I called you 1 time, 2 times, 10 times. I called you until my phone almost died with me. I called you 100 times. His voice broke on the last number, and the pain slipped out before he could hold it. 100 times, he repeated, quieter now but sharper. I just wanted you to come home and see her body. I just wanted you to look at her once. That was all. Charles's lips trembled. Chima. What did you do? Chima asked. You did not come. You did not even pick. You did not send anyone. You disappeared like we were nothing. Charles took a step forward. I was wrong. Chima's eyes flashed. Selfish people like you, he said, voice shaking. You don't deserve to be my father. The words landed like a slap. Charles stood there, wounded, breathing like he had been hit in the chest. Then he bowed his head slightly, like a man finally accepting a judgment he had avoided for years. Yes, he whispered, I was wrong. He looked up again and his eyes were full. I have been trying to make it up to you, Charles said, voice thick. Every day, all these years, I built everything with you in my mind. Chima's face hardened. Charles lifted his hand, gesturing toward the luxury car behind him. Chima, I am not an ordinary man, he said, as if stating the obvious could heal what was broken. I own more than you can imagine. I built power, influence. I own the most powerful bank. People tremble when my name is mentioned. Chima's jaw tightened. I am ready to hand everything to you, Charles continued quickly, as if speed could convince Chima. The properties, the businesses, the bank, the entire family legacy. I'm waiting for you to come home and inherit it. Chima stared at him. Then he shook his head slowly, like he was hearing madness. What inheritance? He said. What legacy? He pointed at his dusty clothes. Look at me, Chima said. I am tired. I am hungry. I came out of work with sand on my skin, and you want to stand here and tell me stories about world assets. Charles's shoulders dropped. Chima. It has nothing to do with me, Chima said firmly. Your wealth, your bank, your name, none of it is my business. Charles's eyes widened. It is your business because you are my son. Chima's voice sharpened again. I'll tell you what, he said. You will not use your money to buy your way back into my life. If you truly have a heart problem like people say, then I'm sorry, but I am not coming home with you. Charles looked like he might fall, but he forced himself to stand. He snapped his fingers slightly, and a man from the car brought out a small box and a thick envelope. Charles held them out with trembling hands. This car, he said, swallowing. It is for you. He raised the box. A house, a mansion. Everything has been arranged. Then he extended the envelope. Inside was a bank card, sleek, heavy-looking, the kind of card people only saw in stories. And this, Charles said, voice careful, is a card linked to accounts that can change your life in a day. Take it, even if you don't want me. Take it. Chima stared at the items as if they were poison. His chest rose and fell. For a second it looked like something inside him might soften. Then his eyes turned cold again. I don't care about these things, he said. He did not take the car keys. He did not take the box. He did not touch the card. And when he spoke again, his voice was low and final. I don't want to see you again. Charles's face crumpled. Chima, he pleaded, stepping forward. Please. I know you suffered. I know I failed you. But you don't have to live like this. Chima lifted his hand, stopping him. Leave my work alone, he said. Leave my life alone. Charles stood frozen, holding gifts that suddenly looked useless. Chima turned away. His stomach growled again, reminding him of the simple truth. Life was still waiting, whether his father cried or not. He started walking, shoulders tight, refusing to look back. Behind him, Charles's voice followed like a wounded prayer. I fought my whole life, Charles said hoarsely. Everything was for you. Chima did not answer. He walked on, dusty and hungry, with 300,000 still sitting in his mind like a mountain he had sworn to climb. And the luxury car behind him remained parked for a moment, shining, expensive, completely out of place, like a past that had finally found him, only to be rejected again. Chima kept walking. The dust on his body felt heavier now, like anger had added its own weight. His stomach still hurt with hunger, but he didn't even care. All he wanted was space, silence, a few hours where nobody dragged his past back into his face. Behind him, the soft sound of footsteps followed. He didn't need to look back to know who it was. "Chima," his father called again, voice strained. Chima stopped and turned sharply. "I said, don't disturb my work," he snapped. "Don't disturb my life." Charles stood a few steps away, breathing hard, like he had been running, not walking. The expensive car was parked behind him, calm and shiny, like it was mocking the street. Charles lifted the bank card again. "Just take it," he pleaded. "For safety." Chima stared at the card like it was a trap. "For safety," he repeated with a bitter laugh. "Safety from what? Hunger? Shame? Or your guilt?" Charles's eyes shone. "Chima, please," he said, and his voice shook. "I know you don't want to hear anything from me. I know you hate me, but take this card. Keep it. Even if you don't use it, just keep it." Chima's jaw tightened. "I don't need it," he said. Charles stepped forward, closer than before, and held the card out again. His hand was trembling. "Please," he whispered. "I'm begging you, not because of me, because I can't watch you like this." Chima wanted to push his hand away. He wanted to shout again. He wanted to tell him to carry his money and leave. But he looked at his father's face. This man that people feared, this man whose name could shut down businesses. His eyes were wet like a helpless person's. His shoulders were low. His mouth kept trembling like he was holding back tears. For the first time, Chima didn't just see a rich man. He saw a man who looked broken. Chima's anger didn't disappear, but something in him softened, just a little. He reached out and collected the card, not with respect, not with gratitude, just to end the scene. "There," he said coldly, I took it." Charles exhaled like a man who had been drowning and finally found air. Chima pointed at him. "Listen," he said, voice low and clear. "Stop disturbing my life." Charles nodded quickly. I will. Chima tightened his grip on the card. "And don't come to my workplace again," he added. "Don't block the road for me. Don't embarrass me in front of people." Charles swallowed. "Okay." Chima turned and began to walk again, slower this time. He expected his father to keep following. But Charles stopped. He stood by the car and watched Chima's back, like a man watching something precious walk away. Then quietly, he entered the car. The car door closed with a soft click. And the car drove off. But Charles Okafor did not drive off like a man who had given up. He drove off like a man who had decided something. Chima got to his small room later that night. He washed the dust off his body slowly, like he was washing off the whole day. He ate something small, nothing fancy, just enough to stop his stomach from turning on him. Then he sat on the edge of his bed and brought out his savings. He poured the notes on the bed and started counting again. 1, 2, 3. His fingers moved fast, careful, like he didn't want to make mistakes. When he finished, he sighed. He was close, but not there yet. Chima leaned back and stared at the ceiling. Then Helen's face came into his mind, clear as morning. 5 years. He remembered the early days when he had left home. He was still struggling, full of dreams. He remembered how he used to encourage her when she cried and said nothing would work. How he would spend what he had just to make sure she didn't feel unloved. He remembered standing by her family too, showing up when they needed help, carrying loads, running errands, keeping quiet when people spoke to him like he wasn't important. He had endured insults he didn't deserve. And he had done it without complaining, because he loved her. He also remembered one hard truth he had been carrying in silence. Helen didn't know everything about him. Nobody did. He had never told her where he truly came from. He had never told her the full story of his father. He had never told her what kind of life he walked away from. He had kept it locked away, the way people hide pain under neat clothes. But after today, he knew he couldn't keep pretending forever. He looked at the bank card on the small table beside him. His father's card. His father's world. Chima shook his head slowly. "This can't continue," he muttered. He picked up his phone, thinking. "Tonight, I will tell Helen everything. Not to show off. Not to threaten. Just to be honest. Just to ask her what he should do next.
because for the first time in a long time, Chima felt unsure. He looked at his savings again and smiled faintly.
The way a tired man smiles when he is still trying. Once I pay this, he said softly to himself, Helen will finally be mine. He paused. Then I can come clean about everything. He folded the money neatly, pushed it back into the envelope and stood up. Outside, the night was calm. But inside Chima's chest, something was beginning to shift. Chima didn't waste time. The moment the thought settled in his chest, I will tell her tonight. He grabbed his phone, slipped on his slippers and walked out. He wasn't going to tell Helen everything over text. Not after 5 years. Not after what happened that afternoon. He was still hurt, still angry, still confused, but there was also something else inside him, an urgency he couldn't explain. Like if he didn't speak now, something would break. As he walked, he kept thinking of his father's face, the shaking hands, the wet eyes. The word Charles kept repeating like a prayer. Please. Chima didn't know why, but he wanted Helen to hear it. Not because he was impressed, not because he wanted pity. He just wanted someone close to him to know what he was dealing with. By the time he reached Helen's parents' house, his breathing was heavier and sweat was already gathering at his temples. The compound gate was open. There were people inside, voices, laughter, movement, like something was going on. Chima slowed down. He adjusted the small envelope of money in his pocket. He touched it once the way he always did, like reassurance. Then he walked in. In the sitting area outside, Helen was there. She looked different. Not her usual simple look. Tonight she was dressed like someone going somewhere important. Her hair was neat. Her makeup was clean and bold. Her earrings caught the light as she turned her head. And beside her was a man Chima had never seen before. The man was flashy in a way that didn't try to hide it. Shiny watch, loud confidence, clean shoes, a smile that looked like it was meant to intimidate. He stood close to Helen, like he belonged there. Chima's step slowed again. Helen saw him, and her expression changed immediately, like someone seeing a problem they thought had already been handled. Chima? She said, loud enough for everyone to hear. What are you doing here? Chima forced a small smile. Helen, he said, I came to see you. Helen didn't let him finish. See me for what? She asked, her voice sharp. After everything? You still dare to show up here? Helen's mother, who was sitting near Bia, chuckled. Chima's throat tightened, but he kept his face calm. I just want to talk, he said. Please, can we talk somewhere private? Helen laughed, one quick laugh that carried no warmth. Private? She repeated. So you can come and beg again? Fill my ears with empty promises? Chima glanced around. People were watching now. Even Helen's mother had stepped closer, folding her wrapper tighter as if she came out to enjoy the show. Chima lowered his voice a little. Helen, please, he said. Let me explain something. Something happened today. My father. Helen lifted her hand like she was stopping the noise. Your father? She said. Chima, I'm tired of stories. Then she stepped closer, stood right in front of him, and spoke clearly so nobody would miss it. Let me make it simple for you, she said. We are done. Chima blinked. What? He asked quietly. Helen turned slightly and held the flashy man's arm like a trophy. I'm engaged, she announced. This is Jason Norsu, my fiancé. The words hit Chima like a slap. For a second he didn't breathe. Then he looked at Helen's face, searching for something. Shame, regret, hesitation, anything. There was nothing. Just pride. Chima swallowed hard. Helen, he said, his voice low now. What are you saying? We've been together 5 years. Helen's eyes narrowed. 5 years of suffering, she replied. 5 years of me waiting for your tomorrow. 5 years of hearing it will get better. 5 years of watching my mates move forward while I keep managing you. But for your information, I figured out my life a long time ago. Jason and I have been dating for some time now, and I really am not sorry you are just finding out now. Chima's mouth opened, but no words came out. Helen pointed at his clothes. Look at you, she said. You came here with that construction dust still on you. Do you even have sense of shame? Chima's face tightened. He tried to speak calmly. I came because I was excited to see you, he said. I wanted to tell you something important. Helen scoffed. Important? She repeated. Is it about that 300,000 you've been killing yourself over? She laughed again, louder this time. That money you are forming like it's a big achievement, she said, shaking her head. 300,000 is like pocket change. That is the money Jason gives me for my skincare. Chima felt something in his chest crack slightly, but he held it in. Helen, he said carefully, that money is not small to me. I worked for it. I did it because I wanted to marry you. Helen's mother stepped forward, lips curled with contempt. Marry her? She repeated. See, this is what real life looks like, and not those promises you have been feeding my daughter. Promising her it will be better someday, when it doesn't seem to get better. A few neighbors murmured in agreement. Chima's eyes stung, but he refused to let tears come out. He had to be a man, although it hurt so much. He looked at Helen again. I supported you, he said quietly. I stood by you. I stood by your family. I endured insults. I never complained. Why are you doing this to me like I'm nothing? Is life all about money? What about everything we have been through? Helen's face hardened. I don't care about what we have been through because you are nothing, she said. The words landed clean and cruel. An embarrassment, she added. That's what you are. Chima's hands clenched. He wanted to shout. He wanted to ask her if she remembered the nights he borrowed money just to help her submit forms, the days he skipped food so she could buy what she needed. But he knew shouting would only make them enjoy it more. So he breathed in slowly, the way he did on the construction site when things became too heavy. Jason finally spoke, smiling like he had been waiting. If you know what's good for you, he said, disappear. Chima looked at him for the first time properly. Jason's eyes were cold under the smile. Jason stepped forward and reached into his pocket. He brought out a black card and held it up like a weapon. The people around reacted immediately, whispering and gasping as if they had seen a miracle. Jason lifted his chin. This is the kind of life Helen deserves, he said. No stress, no suffering, no dirty promises. Helen stood beside him like she had become royalty overnight, her hand still hooked around his arm, her face proud. Chima stared at the card, not because he was jealous, because he noticed something. The logo, the color, the look. It was the same bank, his father's bank. Chima's throat went dry. He stepped forward slightly, eyes still on the card. Helen, he said quickly, please, come, let me talk to you privately, just 2 minutes, please. Helen rolled her eyes like he was begging for food. Talk to me about what? She snapped. So you can lie again? Chima reached for her arm gently just to pull her aside. Helen, please. Helen yanked her arm away sharply. Don't touch me, she shouted. Before Chima could step back, she shoved him hard in the chest. Chima lost balance and fell to the ground. Dust rose around him. A few people laughed. Someone hissed like they were enjoying the humiliation. Chima sat up slowly, his palms burning from the rough ground. Helen pointed at him like he was a disgrace sitting at her feet. Look at you, she yelled. Look at you on the ground like the useless person you are. Then she started calling him names, sharp, ugly words meant to make him feel smaller than the dust on his skin. Chima's ears rang, but his face stayed stiff. He didn't beg. He didn't cry. He just looked up at her, with pain he couldn't hide anymore. Helen, he said quietly, I came here because I thought you were my person. Helen laughed again, bitterly and loud. Your person? She said. Chima, you should be ashamed of yourself. Jason stepped closer, still holding the black card. You heard me, he said. Disappear. Don't come near her again. Chima's eyes went back to the card one more time. Same bank. Same world. And suddenly the scene felt deeper than ordinary heartbreak. Chima was still on the ground. His palms stung. His chest felt tight. The laughter around him sounded far away, like it was happening in another world. Helen stood over him like she had won something. Jason's voice was still loud, still proud, and still cutting. See the kind person you were following, he was saying. Look at him. Nothing. Chima didn't answer. He didn't even look at Jason again. He just sat there, breathing slowly, trying to hold himself together. He had done pain before, but this one was different. This one felt like shame with an audience. Then a voice entered the compound, clear, calm, and not impressed. "Is this how you people behave?" Everyone turned. A young woman had just walked in. She wasn't dressed as she came to a party. She looked like someone who was simply passing by. Simple top, simple skirt, a small bag in her hand, but she carried herself with quiet confidence. Her beauty wasn't loud. It wasn't the kind that shouted for attention. It was the kind that made people look twice without knowing why. Her name was Ruby Okiki. Ruby sold food at the construction site where Chima worked. Rice, beans, noodles, whatever she could cook, and bring in a clean cooler. The workers knew her because she was always there, always steady, always patient with their jokes and their hunger. Chima had bought food from her many times. Sometimes she added extra stew without saying anything. Sometimes she just nodded at him and moved on. They weren't close. They had never really spoken properly. But they had seen each other enough to recognize each other's faces without needing introductions. Ruby wasn't supposed to be here. She had only been passing by to get something from a nearby store when she heard the noise and saw the small crowd. Curiosity made her look in. Then she saw Chima on the ground, and something in her face tightened. Not anger like a fight, but a quiet irritation, the kind that comes when people are being wicked for fun. Ruby stepped forward and looked straight at Chima. For a second, her eyes softened. Then she reached out her hand. "Stand up," she said simply. Chima hesitated. He didn't want to stand up and look weak. He didn't want to stand up and give them another chance to laugh. But Ruby's hand didn't shake. It stayed there like she meant it. So Chima took it. She pulled him up easily, like she had helped men up from worse situations before. As he stood, he tried to step aside quickly, as if he didn't want her involved. Ruby noticed. She tilted her head a little and gave a small, dry smile. "Don't worry," she said, loud enough for the people watching. "You'll survive. You have a strong body." A few people laughed again, but this time it was lighter, less cruel. Chima gave a weak, tired look and answered without thinking. "My body is strong," he said, "but my heart is not." Ruby glanced at him, and her smile faded slightly. She didn't pity him. She didn't dramatize it. She just nodded once, like she understood. Then she turned to Helen and her family. Her voice became firm. "You people should be ashamed," Ruby said. Helen scoffed. "Who are you?" Ruby didn't flinch. "I'm Ruby," she said calmly, "and I sell food at the construction site where this same Chima you're calling useless works every day." She pointed gently at Chima, not like she was begging for him, but like she was stating a fact everyone already knew. "And everybody in this neighborhood knows how hard he has been working to impress your family," Ruby added. "So if you want to break up, but why are you turning it into a show?" Helen's mother hissed. "Mind your business." Ruby's eyes narrowed slightly. "It is my business when adults gather to humiliate one person like it's entertainment," she replied. "And let's not pretend. You people have been collecting his effort for years." A low murmur moved through the small crowd. People did know Chima. They had seen him leave early and return late. They had seen him carry blocks and still walk home quietly. Nobody said it out loud before because nobody wanted trouble. But Ruby said it like she didn't fear them. Chima stared at Ruby in surprise. People usually insulted him. They didn't defend him, especially not in front of Helen and her family. He looked at Ruby like he was seeing her properly for the first time. Ruby didn't even look back at him. She kept her eyes on Helen. "Helen," Ruby said, "you're free to choose who you want, but don't pretend this man is nothing. He tried. He really tried." Helen's mouth tightened. Jason stepped forward, clapping slowly like Ruby was doing comedy. "Oh, so now we have a defender," he said. "Madam Food Seller." Some people laughed again. Ruby turned her head and looked at Jason like he was a small boy making noise. Jason lifted his black card again and spoke loudly, performing for the people. "This is what matters," he said. "Not suffering, not carrying cement, not empty love, money. He leaned closer to Chima, voice full of contempt. "You are worthless," he said. "And you don't deserve Helen. If you know what's good for you, disappear and stop embarrassing yourself." Chima's jaw tightened. He had been silent, trying to leave with what was left of his dignity. But Jason kept pushing. And the worst part was that Jason was speaking like Chima was too stupid to understand what was happening. Chima exhaled slowly. Then, without thinking too much, he reached into his pocket. Ruby noticed the movement and glanced at him. Chima pulled out his own card. Not with pride. Not with confidence. Just with annoyance, like he was tired of being treated like a joke. "Enough," he said quietly. He raised the card slightly. The reaction was immediate. Laughter exploded. Helen laughed first, sharp and mocking. Her mother laughed too, clapping her hands like she had seen a funny skit. Jason laughed the loudest. "See this one?" he shouted. "Now you want to do what? Compete with me?" People laughed because Chima was dusty, broke-looking and standing beside a rich man, showing off. To them it looked ridiculous. But Ruby did not laugh. She didn't smile. She didn't join them. She simply looked at the card, then looked at Chima's face. Her eyes held curiosity, not mockery. She didn't believe him immediately. But she also didn't insult him. And that alone made Chima feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not love. Not hope. Just the small relief of being treated like a human being. Laughter filled the compound. It wasn't the harmless kind. It was the kind that pressed down on a person's chest. Chima stood there holding the card, his face blank, like he was trying to keep his heartbreak from showing again. Helen laughed the loudest, holding Jason's arm as she had already moved into a new life. Jason shook his head slowly, smiling like a man who had found fresh entertainment. "Wow," he said, raising his voice for everyone to hear. "So you're not only broke, you're also shameless." Chima didn't respond. Jason stepped closer and pointed at the card in Chima's hand. "You think you can bring out a fake card and scare us?" he scoffed. "Do you even know what you're holding?" Some neighbors drew nearer, whispering, "That kind card no be ordinario. I've heard it's invite only. Even rich people struggle to get it." Jason turned to the crowd and spoke louder, like he was giving a speech. "Let me educate everybody here," he said. "This is an invite-only black card. You don't apply for it. They invite you." He looked Chima up and down slowly. "And you," he said, voice dripping with disgust. "You are a bricklayer." Chima's jaw tightened slightly. Jason's smile widened. "So tell us," Jason continued, "how did a common laborer lay his hands on a card like this?" He didn't wait for an answer. He leaned in and spoke as if he already knew. "You stole it," he said. Chima's eyes lifted to him, calm but hard. Jason raised a finger. "Or you forged it," he added. "Because people like you'll do anything to look important." Helen's laughter stopped. Her face shifted into angry disgust, like Jason had just reminded her what she wanted to hate about Chima. "You're disgusting," she said. "So this is what you've been doing? Faking wealth?" Chima's lips parted, but no words came out yet. Helen stepped forward, pointing at him. "You stood there pretending to be humble," she spat. "All the while you were planning this nonsense to trap me." Ruby stood beside Chima quietly, watching them. Her expression didn't change much, but she leaned slightly toward him and whispered. "Don't kneel," she said softly. "Even if you're broke, they are not worth your time." Chima didn't even look at her, but he heard her. Jason turned to Chima again, now fully enjoying himself. "Since you like acting," he said, "let's do this properly." He lifted his chin. "My father is the president of this bank," he announced. The compound became louder instantly. "Ah, bank president? Serious?" Helen's mother smiled like she had just won a jackpot. Jason spread his hands like a movie actor. "So let me tell you what will happen," he said. "If you forged this card, you'll rot in prison. If you stole it, you'll still rot in prison." He pointed at Chima sharply. "Kneel down," he commanded. "Kneel and beg me. Maybe I will tell my father to go easy on you." Chima didn't move. Jason's eyes narrowed. "You're still standing?" he asked. You still have pride? Ruby couldn't help herself. She leaned in again and whispered dryly this time.
This one is performing for free. He should be paid. Chima almost smiled, but his face stayed tight. The neighbors were now arguing among themselves. That card no be something anybody fit get.
They say not only people with serious family name fit hold 'em. It's invite only. Even rich men they beg for it. How Bricklayer go get 'em? One man shook his head. It's either fake or stolen. Chima listened to all of it without speaking. Jason enjoyed the noise. He raised both hands like he was calming a crowd. Exactly, he shouted. You people understand. Then he turned back to Chima and raised his voice again. This is enough evidence to lock you up for years, he said loudly. Years, you will suffer, you will beg, you will regret ever opening your mouth in this compound. Helen joined in quickly, her voice full of hatred. I can't believe I wasted 5 years on you, she said. 5 years with someone who can be this low, this dirty. Chima's fingers tightened around the card. Ruby looked at him from the side. She had seen him tired before. She had seen him quiet. But this was different. This was a man reaching the end of something inside himself. Jason snapped his fingers at a young man nearby, one of the neighbors who always liked drama. Bring my phone, he ordered like a king. He took the phone, tapped quickly, and held it to his ear with a smug smile. I'm logging into the bank system, he announced. I will confirm now. And when it shows your card is fake, you will kneel. Chima finally spoke, his voice steady but tired. Do what you want, he said. Jason paused like he didn't expect that calm. Then he smirked and kept tapping. I'm checking, he said loudly. And when I'm done. Ruby leaned toward Chima again, her tone softer now. Are you sure you want this trouble? She asked, looking him in the face properly. They are not worth the time. You don't need to prove anything to them. Just continue being yourself and working hard. I believe it will pay off one day. Chima looked at Ruby for the first time since the scene started. Her eyes were serious. Not pitying him, not flirting, just genuinely concerned. Chima swallowed. Then he answered her quietly, but with something heavy behind it. I'm not doing it for pride, he said. He paused and his voice lowered even more. I'm doing it because I'm tired. Ruby's face softened slightly. Jason, still tapping and talking loudly, suddenly laughed again. Oh, you're tired? He mocked. You'll be more tired in prison. Chima didn't respond to that. Instead, he pulled out his own phone. He scrolled calmly, like a man who had already made up his mind. Then he placed the phone to his ear. Everyone watched. Chima spoke into the phone, voice controlled. Good evening, sir, he said. My name is Chima Okafor. Please come to Helen Ezra's house now, immediately. He ended the call. Ruby's brows lifted slightly. Helen burst into laughter again, almost bending with it. Jason laughed too. See him? Helen shouted. He's calling help! Helen's mother clapped her hands. Chima, you're not serious, she mocked. This is what desperation looks like. Jason stepped forward, grinning. And who did you call? He asked. Your fellow bricklayers? Chima didn't answer. Ruby stared at him, searching his face again like she was trying to decide if he was bluffing or if something real was about to happen. Then she spoke quietly, almost to herself. Stanley Ume? She repeated under her breath, because she had heard the name when Chima said it on the call. She didn't know who he was, but Chima called the name like it meant something. Chima still stood in the same spot, his phone now back in his pocket. The compound had gone quiet, but not because anyone respected him. They were quiet because they were waiting for the help he claimed he called, waiting to laugh harder when nobody serious showed up. Helen folded her arms and shook her head. Jason paced once, then stopped, smiling like a man watching a comedy film. Let's wait, he said loudly. Let's see who this bricklayer called. A car horn sounded outside. Not loud, just one short, clean beep. Then another. People turned their heads. A dark, well-kept car rolled in and stopped neatly by the gate. A man stepped out. He wasn't young like Jason. He looked like someone who had spent years in offices, not on the street. Calm face, neat haircut, simple suit. Nothing flashy, but everything on him looked expensive in a quiet way. His eyes scanned the compound once, quickly, as if he didn't like public attention. Then he walked straight toward Chima. His name was Stanley Ume. Stanley was a senior operations officer at Nordson Bank, the kind of man who didn't sit at the counter, the kind of man who only showed up when something was serious. He handled sensitive client matters and emergency escalations. He stopped in front of Chima and spoke respectfully. "Good evening, sir," he said. "Sorry for the delay." The whole compound froze. Even Helen's mother's mouth remained open. Helen blinked like she didn't understand what she just heard. Jason's smile disappeared slowly. Chima didn't smile. He didn't lift his chin proudly. He just looked tired, like all this noise was too much for his spirit. Ruby noticed it immediately. She stood close enough to see Chima's face clearly. This wasn't a man enjoying power. This was a man who looked like power was a burden he didn't even want to carry. Helen's father cleared his throat, suddenly looking polite. Helen's mother's face changed so fast it was almost funny. She straightened her wrapper and forced a smile. "Ah, good evening, sir," she greeted quickly, acting as if she had been kind all along. Helen also tried to smile, but it came out stiff. Jason, however, panicked. He stepped forward sharply. "Who are you?" he demanded. "And why are you greeting him like that?" Stanley glanced at Jason once, not impressed. Jason pointed at Chima. "This is a scam," Jason barked. "This man is a fraud. I know him. He's just a poor bricklayer." Then he turned to Stanley, eyes wild. "You're corrupt! He paid you to come and act! That's what's happening here!" A few neighbors murmured again. Helen's mother quickly grabbed onto Jason's words like a rope. "Yes!" she shouted. "That's true! He can do anything to trap my daughter!" Helen jumped in too, her confidence returning. "Yes! He's acting!" she said loudly. "Chima can't know someone like you! He's lying!" And just like that, the mood shifted again. It was like they were more comfortable believing Chima was a criminal than believing he might actually be someone important. Chima didn't fight it. He didn't beg. He just looked down for a second, as if he was tired of human beings. Jason raised his phone. "Fine," he said, breathing hard. "Let me call my father. Let him come and expose this nonsense." He quickly dialed and spoke with urgency. "Daddy, please come now," he said. "These people are trying to embarrass me. A bricklayer hired a fake bankman. Please come and show them." He ended the call and pointed at Chima. "You'll regret this," he said. Chima said nothing. Not long after, another car arrived, more aggressive, more commanding. A man stepped out like he owned the street. He was thick-set, loud, and dressed in a rich native outfit with heavy confidence. This was Mr. Victor Nwosu, Jason's father. Victor was a senior executive at Nordson Bank, and in the neighborhood people respected him because of his position and his money. He spoke like a man used to being feared. He entered the compound already angry. "What is all this rubbish?" he roared. "What nonsense is happening here?" Jason ran to him quickly. "Daddy, it's him!" Jason pointed at Chima. "He forged a black card and hired this man to act." Victor's eyes landed on Stanley. "Who are you?" he snapped. Stanley replied calmly, "Stanley Ume, sir." Victor stared at him like he was measuring him. Then Victor turned his head toward the neighbors, noticing how many people were watching. He raised his hand. "Everybody outside," he ordered. "Leave now. This is a sensitive banking matter. No secrets will leak." People grumbled but obeyed. Some still stood at the gate trying to peep. Victor's men pushed them back. Soon only a few people remained inside the small house. Chima, Stanley, Jason, Helen, Helen's parents, and Ruby, who stayed close to Chima like quiet support. Victor moved to a chair and sat like a judge. "Now," he said, "we will verify this card properly. 3 steps." He raised 3 fingers. 1. Card number. 2. Password. 3. 10-finger fingerprint verification. Helen's mother whispered sharply, "He will fail." Helen nodded. "He must fail." Jason folded his arms. Chima stood quietly and handed the card forward. Victor asked for the number. Chima recited it calmly. Victor glanced at Stanley. Stanley typed and checked. He nodded. Correct. Helen blinked. Jason's face tightened. Victor leaned forward. Password. Chima said it calmly. Stanley typed again. A pause. Then Stanley nodded again. Correct. Helen's father shifted uncomfortably. Jason laughed suddenly, forced and loud. He must have memorized it, Jason snapped. Or used a loophole. Maybe the password was simple. This doesn't mean anything. Victor nodded slowly as if Jason's excuse made sense. Yes, Victor agreed. The real test is the fingerprint. Ruby leaned toward Chima. Her voice was low, gentle. Chima, we can leave, she whispered. You don't need this. Chima didn't answer. Ruby sighed softly. And just then her phone rang. She checked it, and her face changed. It was serious. She stepped aside and answered quickly. Her voice dropped even lower. Mummy? She said. What happened? She listened, eyes widening. Okay, she said quickly. I'm coming. Ruby ended the call and returned to Chima. My mum needs me urgently, she said softly. I have to go. Chima looked at her, surprised. Ruby gave him a small smile. You don't have to stay either, she added. You really don't need to prove anything to them. If Helen doesn't want you, there are plenty of women who would value you. She paused, then smiled again, warm but brief. Take care of yourself. And Ruby O'Kiki walked out of the house, leaving the drama behind. Chima watched her go for half a second. Something about her leaving quietly made him feel even more exhausted. Like the one person who didn't mock him had now been pulled away by life. Victor cleared his throat. Let's continue. Stanley brought out the bank verification device. Victor spoke like a man enjoying authority. 10 fingers, he ordered. Chima placed them one after the other. The machine processed. For a moment the room held its breath. Then Stanley's eyes widened slightly. He looked at Victor. Victor leaned forward. What does it say? Stanley's voice was careful. Fingerprint verification, he said. Successful. Helen's mother gasped. Helen's face went stiff like stone. Jason's mouth opened, then shut. Victor's eyes narrowed. He snatched the device and looked. Then his expression changed into something darker. Not shock. Not relief. Something like anger, like a man who just found what he wanted. He lifted his head slowly. Interesting, Victor said. Jason swallowed. Victor stood up. This card is real, Victor announced. Yes. Helen's mother's knees almost weakened. Helen stared at Chima like he had turned into a stranger. Victor's voice rose. But the system shows the card belongs to... He paused deliberately. Sonia Onwudiwe. The room burst again. Helen's mother screamed. Eh? Helen's eyes widened. Jason quickly grabbed it like a weapon. You see? He shouted. You see? He pointed at Chima aggressively. He is a fraud. I knew it. I knew this bricklayer is a fraudster. Victor's voice became loud and authoritative. This card has revealed an important information. It was a trap, he said, eyes hard. A trap to expose criminals and internal corruption. He turned to Stanley. You, he said sharply. You have questions to answer. Stanley's face went pale. Sir? Victor raised his hand. Silence. He pointed at Chima. And you, he said, you will be arrested. Chima's stomach sank. He didn't even argue. He just shook his head slightly and took one step back. I'm leaving, he said calmly. Victor snapped. No, he barked. He's trying to run. Helen stepped forward again like she wanted to stab Chima with words. You're disgusting, she spat. So you really stole another woman's card to impress me? Chima's eyes closed for a second. He was truly tired now. Then, the front door opened. Everyone turned sharply. A woman walked in with quiet authority. She wasn't loud like Victor, but the room felt smaller the moment she entered. Her heels were soft on the floor. Her outfit was simple but expensive. Her face was calm, controlled, and powerful, like someone used to commanding rooms without raising her voice. Her name was Sonia Onwuduwe. Sonia was a high-level executive with deep influence, someone trusted by Charles Okafor personally. She wasn't just wealthy. She moved like wealth wasn't even the point. She looked like someone who handled serious decisions every day. She looked around once. Then her eyes landed on Victor. "Enough," she said calmly. Victor froze like he had just been slapped. "Madame Sonia," he muttered. Jason stepped back slowly. Helen's mother nearly fainted. Helen tried to smile instantly. Sonia's eyes shifted to Chima. She saw his face, dust, exhaustion, silence. She didn't ask questions. She simply spoke with finality. "This matter is over," Sonia said. Helen quickly rushed forward, desperate to save herself. "Madame Sonia, please," Helen began. "He stole the card. He wanted to use it to impress me." Sonia turned her head slowly and looked at Helen like she was something unpleasant. "Stop," she said coldly. "You're embarrassing yourself." Helen's mouth shut instantly. Sonia walked toward Chima and lowered her voice. "Come," she said quietly. "Let's talk outside." Chima followed her into a small corner of the house, away from the others. Sonia spoke low and direct. "I came on Charles Okafor's orders," she said. Chima's eyes hardened slightly. Sonia continued. "He wants you to know it's time. You are meant to inherit everything." Chima exhaled slowly like he already knew that burden was chasing him. Sonia added, "And not only that, I've already positioned you. A major conglomerate is ready for you to take control. Everything is prepared." Chima shook his head. "I'll inherit later," he said quietly. "But not now." Sonia watched him carefully. Chima continued, voice tired but firm. "Not now. I want a normal life first." Sonia nodded slowly. "Normal life is fine," she said, "but we'll still correct nonsense." Chima's eyes lowered. He remembered Ruby's words. "Don't kneel. They're not worth your time." He looked back at Sonia and spoke quietly, almost like a plea. "Please," he said, "don't reveal who I am anymore." Sonia studied him for a second. Then she nodded once. "I hear you," she said calmly. Chima's shoulders dropped slightly, like a man who had been carrying a heavy stone and finally placed it down, just a little. But behind them, the room was still tense, because Victor and Jason were still standing there. And they were about to realize that Sonia didn't come to beg. She came to set things straight. Chima noticed that after Sonia arrived, everything ended the way a storm ends when the sky suddenly remembers itself. Victor's voice dropped. Jason's shoulders stiffened. Helen's mouth stayed half open, but no words came out again. Nobody had power in that room anymore. Sonia's presence swallowed it all. Chima didn't even wait for apologies. He didn't want them. He didn't want to win. He just wanted to breathe. Outside, Sonia spoke to Victor briefly. Low voice, firm tone. Whatever she said, Victor nodded like a man receiving instructions, not giving them. Jason tried to talk once. Sonia didn't even look at him. Helen looked like someone who wanted to disappear into the floor. And Chima simply walked away. Not in pride, in tiredness, in peace. From that day, Chima made a decision. He was done with drama, done with explaining himself, done with standing in front of people who had already decided what he was. So he chose a different path. He kept wearing his simple clothes. He kept doing small jobs. He still went to the construction site, still carried blocks, still took whatever honest work came his way. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Because for the first time in a long time, he wanted his life to be quiet. And somehow, in that quietness, Ruby began to enter his days more, not as a food seller he bought from, but as a person. One evening, Ruby came with her cooler and food tray as usual. Chima bought food, but instead of taking it and walking off like always, he stood there. Then he asked, almost awkwardly, "You never rest?" Ruby blinked at him, then smiled. "You just noticed," she teased. That day they sat on 2 low blocks near the edge of the site, away from the noise, away from the shouting. They ate the same beans and gari she always sold. And they talked. Small talk first, then real talk. Ruby told him about herself, that she lived with her mother, a widow who had been struggling since Ruby's father died, that she finished school, that she had a certificate and a brain but no connection. And in their world, connection was like oxygen. If you didn't have it, you could be smart and still suffer. I've searched for work, Ruby said, picking at her food. I've begged, I've applied, I've followed people, nothing. Sometimes I feel like I'm shouting inside a bottle. Chima listened quietly. Ruby sighed. So I sell food. I help my mother. We survive. That's it. Chima didn't say much about himself. Not because he was hiding, but because he didn't know how to explain a life that had wealth sitting behind it like a shadow, while he was out here living like he had nothing. That night, when he lay on his thin mattress, he couldn't sleep, because Ruby's words stayed in his head. No connection. And he realized something that made him feel ashamed. All his life he had been angry at his father, angry at money, angry at power. But Ruby and people like Ruby didn't even have the chance to reject those things. They suffered just because they weren't born near opportunity. Chima stared at the ceiling and whispered to himself, I've been taking so much for granted. You're a guy with drama. Over the next days, Ruby and Chima started talking more. Sometimes she would bring food and he would wait, not because he was hungry, but because he wanted to sit with her. Sometimes she would finish selling and he would walk her halfway home. Their bond grew in small ways. Silly jokes that made Ruby laugh until she bent forward. Evening walks on dusty roads, talking about nothing and everything. Chima helping her carry her cooler when her arms were tired. Ruby teaching him how to price things properly so customers won't cheat her. Chima giving her small ideas, simple things, not big money solutions. Just practical ways to save time and make more profit. One day, Ruby looked at him and shook her head. You know, say you get plenty drama following you, she said, smiling, as if trouble knows your scent. Chima gave a small laugh. Maybe trouble likes my face, he replied. Ruby rolled her eyes. It's not your face, it's your destiny. Your destiny is noisy. Chima laughed properly that day. A real laugh. He hadn't laughed like that in a long time. One evening, Ruby left early because her mother needed her at home. Chima walked back alone. He entered his small room, sat on his bed, and just stayed there. Quiet. Then he realized something. He was thinking about Ruby again. Not like the way he used to think about Helen. How to impress her, how to prove himself, how to survive her family. This was different. This felt natural, simple, warm. Like something growing without pressure. Chima put his head back against the wall and whispered, this one is real. And that realization scared him a little, because he didn't want to ruin it with his past, or his money, or his name. A few days later, Sonia called him. Chima stared at the phone before answering, like he already knew what was coming. Chima, Sonia said, calm as ever, you need to appear. Even if you don't want the life now, you must show your face. Chima sighed. Sonia, I don't want trouble. This is not trouble, she replied. This is responsibility, just come, quietly, no drama. Chima agreed, not because he wanted revenge, but because Sonia was right. Some things couldn't be avoided forever. Chima showed up in simple clothes. Plain shirt, simple trousers, no shining shoe, no escort. Just Chima. He walked into the building quietly, like a man who was only passing through. But of course, drama still had his address. Helen and Jason were there too. They had dressed like they were attending an event. Helen's hair was perfect. Jason's watch looked like it was heavy enough to buy a small land. They came with gifts, smiling too hard, eager to be noticed. They weren't there for love. They were there for favor. They wanted Sonia. They wanted connection. They wanted to attach themselves to power the way they attached themselves to money. And when they saw Chima, their eyes lit up like they had found a familiar punching bag. Jason laughed. Ah, he said loudly. So you came here again? Helen looked him up and down with disgust. You came to find work? She mocked. Chima, you don't rest. Just because Mrs. Sonia took pity on you and begged for you not to get arrested, you think you can show up here? Jason leaned closer. See him, he said. Go and clean toilets. At least you'll have something to do instead of looking for pity round the nation and showing up where you don't belong. Helen giggled like it was the funniest thing in the world. Chima just stood there. Tired eyes, quiet face. He didn't even have strength to hate them anymore. Then, a voice cut through. Excuse me? Ruby. Chima turned sharply. Ruby was there. Not selling food. Not passing by. She was dressed neatly, simple, clean, and serious. Her folder was in her hand. She was there to apply for a job. Chima's heart skipped, just slightly. Ruby looked at Helen and Jason, then looked at Chima. Then she snapped. You people, she said sharply. Your mouth is like generator, always making noise. Helen's eyes widened. Who is this one? She demanded. Jason scoffed. Another one of his people. Ah, I remember now, she is the same lowlife who stood up for him at my house. Ruby stepped forward, fearless. You can't insult somebody because you think life favors you, she said. If you want to talk, talk with sense. Chima quickly reached for Ruby's arm, not forceful, just pleading. Ruby, he said softly, please, don't fight madness. Ruby looked at him. Then she looked back at Helen and Jason. And her expression said clearly, I hear you, but I don't like nonsense. And just like that, Chima realized something again. Helen used to stand beside people who mocked him. Ruby stood beside him, even when she didn't fully understand his story. Even when it could cost her. And for the first time, Chima didn't feel like proving anything. He just felt grateful. Because in the middle of all that noise, Ruby was the one thing that felt real. The lobby was still buzzing with Helen and Jason's voices, sharp and proud, like they owned the building with their mouths. Ruby stood close to Chima, her eyes moving from face to face like she was trying to understand what kind of world she had just stepped into. Helen was still talking. Jason was still shouting. And Chima was still quiet. Then the glass doors opened again. A man walked in with calm confidence, like someone who didn't need to announce himself. He was in his early 30s, neat haircut, well-fitted suit, clean shoes, and eyes that looked like they had seen too much nonsense to be impressed by it. His name was Daniel Namdi. People in the lobby shifted immediately when they saw him, as if the air changed. Daniel didn't look at Helen. He didn't look at Jason. He walked straight to Chima, and he greeted him with respect. Good afternoon, sir, Daniel said. The word sir landed in the lobby like a slap. Helen's mouth slowly opened. Jason froze for half a second. Then his anger came back even louder. What nonsense is that? Jason shouted. Sir? Sir who? You people must be making a mistake. Before Jason could take another step forward, a woman approached from the side, holding a tablet and walking with purpose. She looked like someone who handled important things every day. Her name was Amaka Obi, a senior staff member in the building, the kind of person who didn't smile unless necessary. Amaka stepped beside Chima and gave him a small nod. This way, sir, she said, her voice steady. Then she signaled to security like it was normal. As if Chima being treated like a VIP was not even a surprise. Jason pointed wildly. No! This is wrong! This is a mix-up! He's a bricklayer! He's nothing! Helen's face went pale. She looked at Chima like she was seeing him for the first time. Ruby's lips parted, but no sound came out. She was still standing there, but her mind was somewhere else. Trying to catch up. Then another set of doors opened, and Sonia Onwudiwe walked in. She didn't rush. She didn't shout. She just walked in, and the lobby went quiet on its own. Sonia's eyes landed on Jason first, then on Helen. Then she looked at the staff around them. Good, she said calmly. Everyone is here. Jason forced a fake laugh. Madam Sonia, you see? This is what I'm saying. These people are confused. This boy is... Sonia lifted her hand slightly. Jason's voice died in his throat. Sonia spoke like she was reading an already decided verdict. From today, we are cutting off every cooperation with Jason Norsu's company, she said. Jason blinked. What? Sonia continued, her tone still calm. Security, she added. Remove them from this building. Helen's eyes widened. Madam, please. Out, Sonia said, simple and final. 2 security men stepped forward. Jason started struggling immediately, shouting insults and threats, his voice echoing through the lobby. You people will regret this. This is madness. You can't do this to me. Helen tried to hold herself, but when they grabbed her arm, fear entered her eyes. She turned sharply to Chima, like she expected him to save her. But Chima didn't move. He didn't even speak. He only watched, tired, quiet, and done. Ruby stood beside him in shock, her eyes stuck on Chima's face. As Helen and Jason were dragged out, Ruby finally whispered, her voice low.
We have to get out now.
Chima,
stay calm.
were you pretending to be poor
The men
all
from the
this
deal,
time?
they know.
Chima turned to her.
All right, let's start
And for the
exit.
first time
now.
in that lobby, his eyes softened.
I'm not pretending with you, he said honestly. He paused, like the truth was heavy. I just don't want to live like my father. Ruby stared at him, not judging, just processing.
Like a person who had just opened a door and found a whole different world behind it. When the lobby finally calmed down, Helen was still outside, breathing hard, her wrapper and hair slightly disturbed from the struggle. Jason was still shouting even as they pushed him toward the gate. Helen's eyes caught Chima again. Desperate, confused, afraid. Chima walked toward her slowly, not with anger, not with pride, just with the calmness of someone who had already moved on inside his heart. He brought out a small envelope. He held it out to her. Helen stared at it like it might burn her. What is this? She asked, her voice shaking. An invite, Chima said. The bank's annual gala. Helen swallowed. Why? I'll explain everything there, he said. Helen hesitated, then collected it with both hands like it was fragile. She didn't even look at Ruby. Ruby stood a few steps behind Chima, still silent, still trying to understand the man she had been eating beans with on the roadside. The night of the gala came like a different world. Bright lights, clean floors, soft music, men in suits, women in gowns, perfume in the air, people smiling with teeth that didn't always mean kindness. Ruby almost didn't come. She told Chima on the phone, I don't belong there. Chima only said, just come, please. And then earlier that day, a package arrived at Ruby's house. A dress. Elegant, simple, beautiful. With a note. You don't need to belong anywhere. Just be yourself. Ruby didn't know what to feel. Her mother, Mrs. Ngozi Okeke, touched the fabric and looked at Ruby quietly. Go, her mother said. Sometimes life opens a door. You don't insult it by hiding. So Ruby came. And the moment she walked into the hall, heads turned. Not because she was trying too hard, but because she looked pure, like someone who didn't dress to compete, someone who dressed to breathe. The dress fit her well. Her hair was neatly done, simple earrings, soft makeup. She looked like a woman who had finally been given space to shine. Chima saw her from across the hall, and something in his chest settled, like relief, like peace. Helen came too, and Jason came with her, still stubborn, still loud, still hungry for attention. Helen's eyes scanned the hall until she found Chima. When she saw him, she marched toward him like she still had something to prove. Ruby was beside Chima now, quiet, observing. Helen's eyes narrowed when she saw Ruby dressed like that. Then Helen forced a laugh. So this is the plan, Helen said loudly. Chima is still doing his acting. Jason laughed too, bitter and dramatic. Helen leaned forward, her voice rising so people nearby could hear. He probably set up everything. He's probably just Sonia's boy toy. That's why she has been standing up for him. Some people gasped. Some people whispered. Ruby's body stiffened beside Chima. But Chima didn't react. He didn't argue. He didn't insult. He simply looked at Helen once, calm and tired. Then he looked away. That silence annoyed Helen more than any insult would have. The music lowered. A microphone sound came on. The hall quieted as people turned toward the stage. Sonia stepped up first, composed and clean. Then she spoke into the mic. "Good evening, everyone," she said. "Tonight is special." People smiled. Phones came out. Then Sonia continued. "We will also be making an announcement concerning leadership and the new bidding process for our major projects." A soft murmur ran through the hall. Sonia lifted her hand slightly. "Please welcome the man our chairman has asked to take over, his son." The lights shifted, and Chima was called forward. The hall went quiet like someone pressed a button. Helen's face drained of color. Jason's mouth opened, but no words came. Ruby held her breath. Chima walked slowly, not like someone enjoying attention, but like someone carrying responsibility. Then Sonia said it clearly, into the microphone. "Chima Okafor is the chairman's son, and his father wants him to take over." The hall erupted. Some people clapped instantly. Others looked shocked. Helen swayed slightly, like the floor moved. Jason's face twisted like he wanted to deny reality but couldn't. Then another man walked onto the stage. Older. Dignified. Eyes full of regret. It was Charles Okafor. The same man Chima had shouted at. The same man Chima had refused. Charles took the microphone, but his voice shook slightly when he spoke. "I know I failed my son," Charles said. "And I know sorry doesn't erase 5 years." The hall became quiet again. This time, not out of respect, but out of the weight in his voice. Charles turned to Chima. "I built everything, thinking I was building a future," he said. "But I lost my son while building it." He swallowed hard. "And I came here tonight to do what I should have done long ago, honor you publicly." Charles stepped toward Chima. Right there, in front of everyone, he pulled Chima into a hug. Chima held him back. Not perfectly, not warmly, but he held him. And for people watching, it was enough to feel the healing start. Charles pulled back and added, his eyes shining. "My son met someone who reminded him not to take life for granted, and I'm grateful for that." Chima's eyes shifted briefly to Ruby. Ruby's throat tightened. At the side of the hall, Mr. Victor Nwosu stood with his son. Victor's face was stiff, like a man who had just realized he slapped the wrong person. Jason tried to whisper something. Victor suddenly turned and slapped him hard. The sound was loud enough to draw heads. "You foolish boy," Victor hissed. "Do you know what you've done?" Jason held his cheek, stunned. Victor rushed forward, trying to force his way closer to the stage. "Mr. Okafor, please," he began, his voice shaky. "It was a mistake. My son is stupid. Please forgive." Sonia stepped forward calmly. "No," she said. Victor froze. Sonia raised a file. "And you, Mr. Victor Nwosu, you're not just guilty of pride." Her voice was flat. "You are guilty of corruption." Victor's eyes widened. Sonia continued loud enough. "We have evidence. Transactions, deals, bribes, abuse of access." The hall exploded into murmurs. Victor's knees almost gave way. Sonia turned slightly. "Security," she said. "Remove him. Effective immediately, he is fired from every position connected to this institution." Victor's mouth moved, but nothing came out. Jason tried to speak, but nobody cared anymore. They were dragged away, father and son, like the building itself rejected them. After the announcement, some of the people who had mocked Chima earlier tried to approach with fake smiles. They spoke quickly. Too sweet. Too desperate. "Chairman, it was misunderstanding." "Chairman, please don't take it to heart." "Chairman, we didn't know." Chima looked at them calmly. "No," he said simply. And that one word was enough. He didn't shout. He didn't insult. He just rejected their sudden respect. Then he addressed the hall again with Sonia beside him. He didn't punish everybody, but he punished the worst offenders. He restored fairness. He set new rules. And when he spoke about the project bidding, he made it clear. "Bidding will be open to honest companies," Chima said. Not just friends, not just people with connections. If you have capacity, you can compete. It was simple, but it shook the hall. Because men like that didn't usually say things like that. Helen stood like a statue for a long time. Her eyes looked empty. Her chest rose and fell like she couldn't breathe properly. Then she pushed through people and approached Chima. Her voice cracked. "Chima," she said. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." Chima looked at her. And for the first time since all this started, he spoke to her like someone closing a chapter. "You didn't lose a poor man," he said quietly. "You lost a good man." Helen's lips trembled. "Please." Chima shook his head slowly. "It's over," he said, "and you don't deserve me." Helen flinched. Chima continued, his voice still calm. "And thank you for the insults. They helped me see my worth." Helen's face crumpled. But Chima didn't hold her, didn't comfort her, because he had moved on. Then, Ruby walked forward fully into the light, elegant, composed. And the entire hall turned again, because the woman they once saw selling food now looked like grace in motion. Chima's eyes met Ruby's, and for the first time that night, his tired face softened into something like hope. Ruby looked at him, still processing the truth of him, but also seeing the man she already knew. Not the title, not the wealth, just Chima. And as people stared, Chima took one small step toward her. Quiet, steady, like he was choosing the only thing that still felt real. Ruby was still standing in the light, her heart beating fast, her fingers slightly cold. Chima stepped closer. For a moment, the whole hall went silent again, like even the music was waiting. He reached out and took Ruby's hand. Ruby didn't pull away. Chima turned to the room, his voice calm but clear. "Good evening," he said. "This is Ruby." He paused, then added something that made heads turn even more. "And she is my queen." A ripple moved through the hall, soft gasps, whispers, and then a few people clapped like they had just witnessed something rare. Ruby's eyes widened. She looked at Chima like she wanted to ask, "Are you sure?" Chima squeezed her hand gently, like his answer was yes. Then he looked at her, not at the crowd, and he spoke like it was just the two of them. "Ruby, I need you to know everything." Ruby's throat tightened, but she nodded. Chima took a slow breath. "I didn't plan for all this drama," he said quietly. "I was going to tell Helen the truth that night. I even wanted her advice." His jaw tightened a little, the memory still painful. But she didn't wait. She insulted me. And while I thought she was enduring with me, she was already with Jason. Ruby blinked. Not shocked like the crowd. More like someone who had suspected that people could be that cruel, but still hated hearing it confirmed. Chima continued softly like he was tired of carrying the story alone. "I loved her in a way that made me beg for respect," he said. "I thought love meant suffering and proving myself." He looked down briefly, then back at Ruby. "But with you, I don't feel like I'm begging." Ruby's eyes shone. Then she said the truth the way she always did, simple and direct. "I liked you when you were just Chima," she said. She held his gaze steady. "If your wealth will change you, I will disappear." The hall felt even quieter after that, like everyone suddenly remembered this was not a movie scene. This was real. Chima's eyes softened. "It won't," he promised. Then he added slowly, like he had been thinking about it for days, "I want to build a life that is quiet, not noisy." Ruby nodded once, almost like she was making her own decision too. "Then don't let them push you," she whispered. Chima smiled, small, genuine. "I won't." He lifted Ruby's hand and kissed her knuckles gently. Then, like he couldn't hold it back anymore, he leaned in and kissed her. Not in a showy way. Not for the crowd. Just honest. For a second there was stunned silence. Then the hall erupted into applause. Some people clapped because they were happy. Some clapped because it was safer to clap than to look guilty. And some clapped because they realized a new power had entered the room, one that didn't need to shout. Across the hall, Helen stood frozen. Her face twisted like she had been slapped by reality itself. When she saw Ruby in Chima's arms, her pride finally broke. She turned and rushed out of the hall, her heels clicking fast, her breathing uneven, humiliation chasing her like a shadow. Helen got home shaking. Her parents were still awake, restless, anxious about what had happened at the gala. The moment Helen entered, her mother stood up quickly. "Helen, what happened?" her mother asked. Helen's voice broke as she spoke. "It was true," she said. "Everything." Her father's face tightened. Helen swallowed hard. "Chima is Charles Okafor's son," she said. "He was never poor. He was just quiet." Her mother sank back onto the chair like her legs forgot how to stand. Helen continued, tears forming. "He did so much for us," she said. "He ran errands. He helped. He respected you. He never insulted you even when you insulted him." Her father stared at the floor. Her mother covered her mouth. The regret in the room was heavy, because it wasn't just about losing money. It was about losing a man who had real patience, real love, and real dignity. Helen's mother whispered, almost to herself. "We chased noise and rejected peace." Helen didn't answer, because there was nothing to defend anymore. Jason didn't take the disgrace well. He moved like a wounded animal, angry and desperate. He started talking to the wrong people, making calls, trying to teach Chima a lesson. But Jason didn't understand one thing. When you play dirty for years, dirt eventually sticks to your own hands. And some people had been watching him long before the gala. A few days later, Jason was picked up quietly. Not for fighting, not for insults, for money laundering. The evidence was already there. Hidden accounts, fake transactions, dirty movement of funds. By the time Jason tried to shout his way out, it was too late. He was taken in. And this time, no loud words could save him. Charles still wanted Chima fully inside the empire. Not halfway, not quietly. Not when he's ready. He wanted him now. But Chima felt the weight of two lives pulling him. One life was loud and powerful. Meetings, headlines, control, revenge, pride. The other life was Ruby. Small laughter, honest food, evening walks, peace. One night, after things calmed down, Chima sat with Ruby outside her house. The air was cool. The street was quiet. Ruby looked at him gently. "You've been thinking," she said. Chima nodded. "My father wants me in fully," he admitted, "and I understand why." Ruby didn't argue. She just said softly, "And what do you want?" Chima stared into the night. "I want to be a good man," he said, "not just a powerful man." Ruby smiled a little. "Then be both," she said. "You don't have to trade one for the other." Chima looked at her. Ruby touched his hand. "You can lead and still be humble," she said. "You can be rich and still be kind. Your wealth should be a tool, not your personality." Chima exhaled, like something inside him finally loosened. "That's it," he whispered. "That's what I've been trying to say without knowing the words." Not long after, Charles asked to meet Ruby's mother. Ruby was nervous, but Chima held her hand the whole time. Ruby's mother, Mrs. Ngozi Okeke, welcomed them with simple respect. Her home was modest, clean, warm. The kind of place where love had to work hard to survive. Charles sat down slowly, like he understood he was entering a sacred place. He looked at Mrs. Okeke and spoke with sincerity. "Thank you," he said, "for raising a good daughter." Mrs. Okeke blinked, surprised. Charles continued, his voice heavy with truth. "My son and I lost many years," he said, "and somehow, your daughter helped bring him back to himself." Mrs. Okeke's eyes softened. "I didn't raise her to be perfect," she said. "I raised her to be kind." Charles nodded. "That kindness reunited me with my son," he said. Then he did something Ruby's mother didn't expect. Charles bought her a house, not as a way to control Ruby, not as a way to show off, but as gratitude and as a promise that Ruby would never be forced to carry hardship alone again. Mrs. Okeke cried quietly that day, not because of the house, but because for the first time in a long time, life felt like it was finally exhaling. Months passed. Not in a rush, not in noise. Chima and Ruby dated the way normal people date. They talked. They laughed. They argued sometimes. They apologized quickly. They grew. Chima still showed up in simple clothes sometimes. He still visited the places he used to work. Not because he was pretending. Because he didn't want to forget who he was when nobody cared. But he also began to step into the empire, slowly, carefully. He started setting rules that protected workers. He opened opportunities for people without connections. He changed things quietly. One night, Chima took Ruby out. Not to a flashy place. Just somewhere calm, open, and peaceful. The sky was full of stars. Ruby looked up and smiled. Chima watched her for a moment, like he was memorizing her face. Then he took her hands. "Ruby," he said softly, "you gave me something Helen never gave me." Ruby blinked. "What?" "Peace," Chima said. He swallowed, emotion tightening his throat. "And you reminded me that love is not something you buy. It's something you build." Ruby's eyes filled. Chima lowered himself slowly and brought out a ring. Simple, elegant, not noisy. "Ruby Okiki," he said, voice slightly shaking. "Will you marry me?" Ruby covered her mouth. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She nodded quickly, then laughed through tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Chima." Chima stood and pulled her into his arms. They kissed under the stars, soft, grateful, real. Helen never recovered what she lost, but she learned the hardest lesson. Some doors don't reopen, especially when you slam them with pride. Helen's parents carried their regret quietly. They stopped mocking humble people, because they now understood. Humility is not weakness. Jason remained in trouble, his revenge swallowed by his own crimes. Victor Norsu's fall became a warning in the business world. Power without character always collapses. Sonia stayed by Chima's side as a steady guide, not controlling him but helping him correct what needed correcting. Charles and Chima began rebuilding their relationship slowly, day by day, not by speeches. And Chima finally stopped living to impress people. He chose a life where love was not a competition, where wealth was not a loudspeaker, where peace had value. Ruby didn't change him. She simply brought out the man he was always meant to be. And for the first time in a long time, Chima was not trying to prove anything. He was just living.